Okay, welcome. This is it's going to be a short video here on ecological relationships. So we're just getting into ecosystems here. We talked about nutrient cycles already. Going to talk about how do organisms interact within an ecosystem. So the first thing I want to just show you is a food web, and you're probably pretty familiar with this. There's one thing to note about the food webs and food chains that we do, that we always point arrows to the top of the food chain, so we know where the energy is getting passed on towards in a food web. So here's just an example food web, and you can see my awful drawings are up here, but we have grass, cattails kind of at the bottom. Those are the producers. Those get passed on, their energy gets passed on to crickets and grasshoppers, things that eat them. If you take a grasshopper, then for example, can be eaten by the shrew. The cricket can also be eaten by the shrew, but the cricket can also be eaten by the frog. The frog can be eaten by the snake. The shrew can be eaten by a snake or a hawk, and that completes a food web. So from these food webs generally show a predator-prey relationship. So when something eats something else, it's a predator-prey relationship. So here's a graph showing just an example. We'll do a few of these in class, but a graph of a predator population versus a prey population. So one thing you got to note first of all is that the prey population should normally be higher than the predator population. So predators, there's usually less of them because they rely on the food, which is the prey. So in terms of population size, we have high population and low population. And these follow a cycle. And if you're familiar with deer and wolves, for example, or rabbits and the minks that are organisms that eat rabbits is another common one. But basically, what happens is with the prey organism, when the prey organism's population plummets, that causes the predator population to plummet. So if we consider this a really good year for prey, this year is really good for predators, and that it's a lag time of about 1 year between their peaks. So the prey will peak here, then the next year the predators would peak. Okay, as the prey population plummets, then a year later the predator population plummets. Okay, if we go down here, we see the cycle repeats again. So when the prey gets high again, then the predator, about a year later, their population will get high again. So predator-prey is simply one consuming the other, and they follow the cycle where the prey actually determines how many predators there can be in an environment. A lot of people get those two mixed up or backwards. The next types of relationships are what we call symbiotic relationships. These are relationships where two organisms closely interact, and there's three main types that we'll talk about. I'm just going to use an example with bacteria and humans. Bacteria plays a role in our body, a couple different roles. Mycobacterium is a bacteria that lives in our body, and in this case, bacteria, they benefit from this relationship. Humans are not harmed. So it doesn't matter if they're there for us or not really. If they were there, it doesn't harm us. If they're not there, it doesn't harm us either. Okay? The middle one is E. coli, and many people see E. coli as being this really one that makes us sick and stuff, but that's not always the case. Actually, we have E. coli in our intestines that help us with digestion. So as a human, we're being helped by this organism. The bacteria that lives there also benefit from getting nutrients and things that we eat. So there's two different examples. The third one is a pathogenic bacteria. And this is, something that makes you sick, as an example. Bacteria benefit from this. They get in, they multiply, so they harm us, the host. We're considered the host organism in this case. So to define these three examples, we use three definitions. So the first one species benefits and the other is unharmed, we call commensalism. Both species benefit, we call mutualism, so a mutual relationship. And then the last one is parasitism, so like a parasite. This is where one species benefits and the other species is harmed. So these terms really indicate what type of relationship they have, and there's many organisms that we'll talk about quite a few in class that fit into one of these three roles. Okay, that's it for today.